Hi and welcome to Market News Media. My name is Alan Elfman and we're going to be interviewing Sedona Mayor Rob Adams, who's running for re-election. And we're here in his home and it's as ambient as one could relax, and I can understand why he's so relaxed right now. So with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce Rob Adams.
Hi Alan, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure seeing you.
Always a pleasure.
Well, you're running for re-election, and I just want to give people, because we have so many viewers that own homes here, that don't even really live here, that have no way of hearing or reading about why you're still the man for the job. So we figured we'd do this. I just interviewed your running mate, Jerry Frey, so just want to ask the same question so the public can know from both of your point of view.
Good. Glad you're doing it.
My pleasure. So why is it that you're running for re-election?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this, because this does give the opportunity to people that have a second home elsewhere but do vote here in Sedona to really hear from the candidates, and this is the best media to do it. Why I'm running for re-election was the same reason that I ran for election in the first place. I love public service. 15 years ago, when I moved to the Verde Valley, I got into the Boys and Girls Club, and that led into Big Brothers Big Sisters, which led into working on the Verde Rural Fire Department and the Senior Center, and on and on and on. And I just got, the payback for me was the knowledge that I was helping other people. And you know, I have a list of accomplishments that I've been involved with other board members, including the development of parks and a senior center and a fire station and a new Boys and Girls Club and things like that. And you know, creating those legacies adds meaning to my life that I couldn't do in any other way.
And coming from a husband and a father, so you have vested interest in it all.
Well, I think on top of that, it's setting a good example for my son. You know, and I know that my son, who has just graduated from college, has an interest in public service as well. So I think all parents owe it to their children to really set the example for them and show them that, you know, this isn't just about take, it's about give. Yes. And being grateful for where we live.
And beautiful Sedona, you just can't get better than that, can you?
It's an inspiration.
It is an inspiration. To touch base, and I asked Jerry Frey the same question, why don't you list some of your accomplishments, some of your things that you have been part of?
Well, actually, I've been in office for 4 years.
You
know, I was 2.5 years on city council and then a year and a half as mayor. I'll be finishing up my term in June, and hopefully if I get re-elected on March 9th, then I'll have another 2 years. You know, in anticipation of you asking me something like that, I have something on my website. I have my biography, my list of accomplishments, my vision for Sedona, all on my website, which is robadamsformayor.com. And I would invite all of the listeners to go to that, to read that information. In terms of what I've accomplished, I think what I'm most proud of, but at the same time has been most difficult, is just getting through the last year and a half. If you think about it, this has been, I think, arguably the most difficult time in the history of Sedona.
Yes.
You know, we've had the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. One of the things that I thought my biggest challenge was going to be mitigating the impacts of Highway 179 construction on this community, in particular for our business community. But you know, I would say within 2 months after I was elected, the downturn really began in earnest. And so council got very proactive in terms of reducing our expenditures and looking for other revenue sources. Another thing that happened that I totally didn't anticipate was the resignation of the city manager. And essentially, even though the assistant city manager stepped into those shoes and she really did a nice job, for 7 months we were without a real city manager. And so that created an additional burden that you know, I hadn't anticipated. In addition, we had several resignations on city staff. Our city clerk, our city magistrate, our police chief has retired, yeah. You know, there's been quite a bit of turmoil on staff, and one would expect that during an economic turndown as well. In addition, I just declared an emergency last week because of the anticipated flooding, and then if you remember back in September, I declared a disaster back then when we had the big flood. And then, you know, the difficulties that we've had on council, you know, have been a challenge, so it's been tough. So just leading the city.
And the vice mayor has also resigned.
Leading the city through that. 3 council members have resigned. In addition to that, I'd just like to list a few things off if I could.
Okay.
I can do it more quickly if I read this. Shortly after I was elected mayor, I formed a committee to review the Roadrunner transit system, which has been quite controversial in Sedona. As a result of that review, the Roadrunner transit system now serves the greater Sedona community, as well as we're saving $125,000 a year in operating costs. So that was a
nice caveat.
That was a nice caveat. I helped establish the Greater Sedona Substance Abuse Coalition, which is looking at educating and informing people in Sedona about the substance abuse issues that we have here. We're also looking at creating more treatment centers and things like that. I was instrumental, actually, that was my idea to form the Verde Valley Regional Housing Commission, and that is looking at affordable housing from a regional standpoint. I was instrumental in creating new event funding for Sedona. And as a result of that funding, we've had several new events that have been created. One of them was the book fair, the Red Rock Canvas. Upcoming will be the Photo Fest, which I'm really excited about, which is very similar to the Plein Air Festival. Oh, nice. I was also involved in, I was kind of part of the brainchild of establishing a new branding policy in Sedona. What was happening was most of our businesses were using different ways of branding and marketing their businesses. And what this is a cohesive branding process that we can use so that we're all basically putting the same image out there. I also created the Sedona Events Alliance, which is a collaboration of businesses and the lodging industry to look at how they can create new events, which conversely brings more revenue in terms of sales tax and bed tax. These are multi-day events that we're looking at return on the investment. Things like the Jazz Festival, those kinds of ideas, the Film Festival.
Yeah, Film Festival next month.
I also have been very active in developing relationships with our local, regional, and state partners. I was appointed to the Arizona Town Hall, and I'm very honored about that. And I was also appointed to be on the executive committee of the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. And that gives us some contacts and some connections on the state level. As well as I've been very proactive in working with the Northern Arizona mayors and dealing with regional issues, those are just a few examples.
And that's just part of your day.
Yeah. I didn't mean to take up the whole interview with that. I'm sorry.
No, because this is part 1 to part 2 videos, because I know you've had a bunch of accomplishments. I've had the pleasure of watching these develop as you've been mayor. So as a resident, as a taxpayer, as a father, and as a husband, it's nice to hear the reassurance, because people often, you know, this is a tourist city, but for the people who stick it out and live here, it's nice to see that nice things are being done by the people we elected.
Well, I think that, you know, as just a continuation of those accomplishments, probably the most important one is keeping my eye on the ball, which is fiscal responsibility. You know, as soon as the economic downturn started, I initiated a series of special city council meetings to deal with our budgetary issues and the downturn in the revenues that were coming into the city.